Okay, so if you've purchased the Getting Started kit for Christmas, one of the designs is for a star-shaped Christmas ornament. When they're finished, they can look like this, or like this, or you can do an alternative like that. For the purposes of the video, I'm going to use black and white because it's much easier for you to see and to follow along with what I'm doing. So the first thing we're going to do is make some guidelines so that you can prepare and do what you need to do for your star. And the way that we do this is just to take any straight edge that you have and line it up with the top point of the star and the bottom edge of the star. And we're going to just draw a line with the chalk pencil that came in your kit straight down the middle. And then we do that for each of the points. That will give you your center point and the guidelines that you need to begin working on. So in your paint strip, you got in your set a paint strip with multiple colors in it. We're going to begin by using the white. And the first thing that we're going to do is to place the center dot. In your kit, you have a blue rod that looks like this, and that's what we're going to use to place our center dot. So you want to dip it in the paint and take it and put it right in the center and touch down lightly. You don't want to press very hard. You just want it to be a nice, perfect circle. If you press too hard, it will squidge out and it won't look very good. If it becomes a problem, take it off and start again, because if you don't get the center right, you'll have problems all the way through your project. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our smallest clear rod that came in your set, and we're going to place small dots all the way around the points. Now you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines, and we're going to place one dot in line with each line as close as you can get to the center dot, but not touching the center dot. And with these, you're going to dip every time. So I do my first dot, and then I like to spin it around and do my second dot to make sure that they've lined up properly, like that. And then I'm going to do one here, and again, spin it around and place one here, and keep going until you have filled up all of the space, all of the lines around your star. And that's what we would call round one. Now we're going to take the larger clear rod. There are 3, and you can see the difference in the sizes as you look at them. We're going to take the large clear rod, and we're going to do 10 dots again in the spaces between those. So the first dot will go here. And then again, if you work in an opposite line, just to try to keep them lined up, you'll go to the other side and work your way around until you have filled in your circle. Now we're going to do 5 larger dots to the points of the star. We're going to use the purple rod from your set, and we're going to put 1 dot here, 1 dot on this point of the star, this point of the star, this point of the star, and we're going to fix that in just a second. If you get a little mark like I just got, all you need to do is take a toothpick or something small and just spread the paint out to fill in that tiny mark that didn't fill in. There you go. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do is what we call walking the dots. And you're going to take your pink stylus tool, which is the smallest one that you have, and there are 2 different sizes on each end. There's a small end and a large end. And we're going to start with the large end, and we're going to place 1 dot on the line above the star. And you're going to dip every time that you do that dot. Now the first one I did looks a little bit smaller, so I'm going to go back and dip on that one again. So you want to make sure they look as even in size as possible. Now the next part is with the smaller end. We're going to dip the small end in the tool, and we're going to do what we call walking the dots. And that means we dot and we dot and we dot and we dot, and they get smaller each time. And you want to then dip and do the next one. Try and do the same number of dots for each side. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is right for me. Your dots might be slightly larger or slightly smaller. Whatever number you settle on, just try and do the same number so that it's symmetrical. If you get it wrong and you have 1 more or 1 less in a row, it doesn't actually matter. Nobody's going to notice that when your work is done. I tend to do 1 side at a time and then go back and do the other side. So if we start at the top again and it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the first set done. Now for the second set, we're going to do exactly the same thing, but we're going to move on to a bigger stylus tool and get a bigger dot. So we're going to start with the large end, and you want it to be a little bit further away so you get that nice shape as you work. So we're going to put it above the last dot that we did and a little bit higher up, always using your line as a guide so that it remains symmetrical. And place your first 5 dots. Clean the top of your tool off so you don't end up with paint all over your hands like I normally do. And then go in with the smaller end, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. Make sure you have quite a bit of paint on or you will start to run out. You want to do the same again. I try to aim to do them in the spaces between the previous dots. It makes it look really quite pretty if you can get it like that. If you can't in the beginning, don't worry too much about it. Nobody has the pattern that's going to receive your ornament, and they won't know. And it's going to look lovely. If the dots start getting too big, wipe your tool off and start again. It just means that you've got a little bit too much of a buildup on the tip of your brush. And now that I've completed one side, I'm going to go back and do the other. Typically, you'll find, whether you're left or right-handed, you'll find one side easier to do than the other. It just takes practice. I would suggest that before you start your star, you try doing each of these things on a bit of card so that you're happy with how hard to push and what it's going to look like and how much paint you need to make that turn out properly for you. And that's the 2 sets done, and the pattern starts to form. Now we're going to do another set of dots. This time, we're going to start with the blue stylus tool, and we're going to place our top dot, again, a little bit higher up. So we have room to create that V shape at the point. And then I am going to do walking the dots with the large end of the white stylus to get the effect that we want. So again, we're going to dip the tool and we're going to aim to go in between the dots that we did on the previous row, like that. In the beginning, when you're starting out, sometimes it's easier to get to a stage and then let it dry, because if you have to correct anything, it's much easier if the dots you try to remove or touch up are the dots around it are dry to work on. So just take your time. It's not a race. If your dots have come out smaller than mine and you feel like you have space to do another row of walk the dots, then go ahead and do that. But for mine, I think that 3 is enough. Now the next step that we're going to do is we're going to walk some dots from here out to the end, because we want to create a line at each of these points on the star. So I'm going to take my blue stylus, use the large end of my blue stylus, and I'm just going to walk it out from here. So it goes like this. You might have room for only 4. Whatever number you go with, just try and be consistent on each point. I got a little bit of a bubble on that one and that one. So I'm just going to go back and touch them up again. If you have to fix a dot, and you've already done several, if you try to start again after you've dipped it in, the dots are not going to be an even size. So what I tend to do is, if I want to fix the 3rd dot, I will dop the tool in the paint, and then on the side, I'll just make those 2 extra dots and go in at dot 3 so I get the right size. They're just little tips and tricks to try to make it a bit easier for you when you're starting out. Okay, so that part is done. Now, the next step that we're going to do is, again, we're going to walk the dots from here out to the edges of the stars. And we are going to do that, again, with the same tool. And we're going to start with 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're putting these a little bit further apart because we're going to do some swooshing down the sides, and you want to have some room to do that. Now, you won't get a dot where the star hole is, so you just dot it there. You get a bit of a hint of it, but you won't get a whole one because you have a hole to hang your ornament through. So you then have 4 dots on all of the points of your stars. We're then going to go back to the really small end of the pink tool, and we're going to do swooshing. Now, swooshing just means, let me find something I can show you on. Swooshing just means we're going to take the paint and dip it in, and we're just going to pull it like that. So you get a bit of a star shape. Now, you can curve them quite a lot, you can curve them a little, but practice that so you can get a consistent size going for the project that you're working on. I know that this is the right size for me to make these work, so I'm going to start at the bottom with the first one that we dotted, and I'm going to take my tool and I'm just going to pull down from there to the side. And I'm going to do it again from here, not going as far, and from here, again, not as far, to a nice small one. So we get 4 going. And I'll repeat this again on the next row. Now that came out quite short, and that will happen sometimes. It helps if you dot the paint and then pull it down if you're having trouble with that. So dip the paint a bit and pull. Dip the paint and pull. If you don't feel like you have room for the very top one, you don't have to do it. You can leave them all without. You can also, if you want to, do different colors for each of the rows. It's up to you. You can choose what colors you want to use and what order you want to use them in. And then we go back and do the other sides. Start at the top. Some people find pushing is easier than pulling, so you can try that as well to see which is easier for you. So you can do some that way. It really depends on you just finding your own comfort zone and taking your time and having a play. If any of them you're really not happy with the way it looks, my suggestion is let it dry and then go back and touch it up. Because if you try to do it whilst it's wet, you can get quite a fat tail, which is not the effect that you want. So leave it to dry and then we'll go back. I've done one that's really quite short here. And when we have let this dry for a while, when we come back, I will show you how to touch that up. Now the next thing that we need to do once that is finished is what we call top dotting, which is adding a color onto all of that white. I leave this probably for about an hour just to make sure it's nice and dry, and then we'll come back and do some top dotting. So I see you in a moment. Okay, so now our stars had a chance to dry, and the first thing I'm going to do is go back and fix the two that came out just a little bit on the short side when we did this the first time around. So I'm going to go back into my white paint, get quite a bit of paint on my stylus, start at the top and pull down, and do the same for this one that came up just a little bit on the short side. And I noticed that this one went a little bit off the edge, so I'm just going to touch that up a bit. And then we're all done and ready to start our top dotting. Now, when you top dot, you want to use a tool that's slightly smaller than the one that you used originally, so you can see the outside edge and you get the effect of it being layered up. So in this instance, because we're doing black and white, I'm going to use silver, and I'm going to start with the purple rod and do our center dot. So you dip it like we did with everything else, you go into the center, gently touch the surface, and you get a spot on top. For the next round, we used the smallest rod in the beginning. I'm going to use the largest end of the green stylus tool to do these. So again, I'm going to dip every time. I'm going to go in, really lightly touch, because these, you don't want the white to disappear around the edges. Oh, missed one. Now for the second round of dots, I'm going to go in and use the medium-sized clear rod to top dot those. Now you can top dot as much or as little as you would like. It's completely up to you. In some cases, you can go back again and you could do a small dot on top of each of these with another tool that's slightly smaller to create a third level, and it just starts to give your work some depth. In this instance, because it's a beginner project, we're just going to finish off by using the largest clear rod on the last 5 circles from the star points. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that would be all of the dots that I would top dot if I was completing this project. So what you want to do now is set this aside and leave it to dry. Now it's really important, once you've done that, before you put any varnish on, you will see that there are white lines. I hope you can see them. There are chalk lines, the chalk lines that we made on each of the points. You need to go back in with a cotton swab. Make this a bit smaller again. Go back in with a cotton swab. Dip it in a bit of water and gently remove the lines. Now, I can do this on an end here, and you can see what I mean. You're just really going to buff them away and they will come off. It's really important when you're making your lines, you want to do them as light as you possibly can. Don't dig in too hard into the paint, so that makes them much easier to come off. Then set that aside, let it dry completely, clear off your lines, and then you can go ahead and brush on the clear varnish that's in your kit with the sponge. If you want to, you can turn it over when it's completely dry, and you could write your name and your initials on the back so that people know who made it and the year that they made it. And you can just carry on and have a really good time. I hope you've enjoyed that and that you found it helpful. Good luck on your dotting adventures. Bye. Okay, to show you one that's been finished and has had the varnish put on it, this is done on a blue background, and it was alternating between silver and white with the walking of the dots. And on this particular one, it has 4 rows of dots, so it went a little bit higher up. But you can also see in the center, these have been triple dotted. So there's a white circle, then a blue, and then the silver, which just gives it a bit more depth. So have fun, use your imagination, and enjoy. Bye.